Hey, welcome back, everyone, again to youtube.com/Ryan's Vedic Astrology, the YouTube channel for Asheville Vedic Astrology.com. We are nearing, well, we're almost 2/3 of the way through this video series, this 86 video series on the planets for each ascendant. And we've been talking about Capricorn. And I'm here again with Dustin Cormier, who is a year 2 astrological apprenticeship student at Asheville Vedic Astrology. And we're going to discuss Mercury for a Capricorn ascendant. So again, welcome back, Dustin. It's wonderful to have you.
It's a pleasure, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And if after watching this video, you want to learn more about Dustin or the work that he does, his YouTube channel is youtube.com/HowToRockAstrology.
You got it. Thanks a lot, Ryan. Happy to be here.
Yeah. And let's see. So we'll just follow the same pattern that we've been going through.
Sure.
And we're going to consider Mercury. So Mercury rules over the 6th house for a Capricorn ascendant and also the 9th house. And Mercury is debilitated in the 3rd, yet exalted in the 9th. So where would you like to start chewing on that, Dustin?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. This one's an interesting one. We just did the Venus video for Venus for a Capricorn ascendant. And we noted that, I mean, this is bound to be like this. Venus is exalted in Pisces and Virgo is exalted. Mercury is exalted in Virgo.
Right.
It's an interesting thing because usually we consider that the earth and air ascendants tend to have Saturn, Venus, and Mercury as their ringers, as their kind of well-to-do planets of strength and auspiciousness.
Right.
So it's interesting that Venus, really the best planet for a Capricorn, does well in the 3rd house, and Mercury, which is the second runner-up, it's the second highest auspicious planet for Capricorn, is actually at its highest strength in the opposite. So it's interesting that, at the base plate, we could say the Venusian emotional feelings of Saturn are expressed best in Saturn's own experience when Saturn is viscerally engaging in 3rd house things, 3rd house explorations, doing the work itself. There's a fulfillment through Venus of finding things itself.
Right.
Now, Mercury for Saturn is actually best in the 9th house. It's exalted in the 9th house where Virgo is. So this kind of tells us that as opposed to the emotional layer of Capricorn or the fulfillment layer, Capricorn's mind does much better with objectivity, with reading the manual, reading the operator's manual before they get their hands into the thing. Right. So we could say at the fulfillment level, Capricorn wants to involve itself with a job where it's really in it and involving itself. But when it gets there, if it gets there, its mind works best by, like I said, reading the manual, learning the knowledge that's been given from tradition, from behind it. Capricorns probably do really well by looking on Amazon.com for the best book on a subject. If a Capricorn wants to learn how to make a guitar, they probably, especially if the Mercury is well placed, the 9th Lord factor is going to say, what have people always done? What's the knowledge from before me that can help me expand my mental capacities with regards to this thing that I'm trying to deal with?
Right.
Did you want to say something more?
No, keep going. Cool. I had something, but it was off topic, so I wanted you to finish your thought first.
Feel free to hold on to it, pal.
I will.
And feel free to interject. So Mercury is Parashara gives us the word that Mercury is auspicious for a Capricorn ascendant. And like I said, Mercury, Saturn, and Venus do well for any air or earth ascendant sign. So we can generally say that Mercury is auspicious, of course. So Mercury not only rules the ninth, which is the most auspicious house, but it also rules the sixth, which is like the second most inauspicious house. It's still generally auspicious, but whatever Capricorn does with regard to Mercury, it's going to have to include this sixth house emphasis. It almost goes to say that whatever Capricorn involves itself in, its highest knowledge, when it's going for its highest knowledge, it's going to be bumping knees with other people. Mm-hmm. Capricorn does best, again, doing things with others and dealing through its knowledge that it learns, through the knowledge that it can absorb. Capricorn wants to know not only that that knowledge is true, but that it can win with other people.
Right.
You know, when they're whether they're sword fighting, they'll learn all about it. And in order, you know, sword fighting could be a very Capricorn thing, because not only do they learn about it, but you have to do sword fighting. Mm-hmm. Music is even the same way. You have to engage in the musical play with other people. And when you're dealing musically with other people, this theme might not always come out, but it will probably for a Capricorn ascendant, is that when you're playing music, someone's got to make a beat and put it down, or some kind of thing to bounce off of. And Capricorn will say, well, this is this thing that I've always done. And they'll do it, and they'll put it in there. And everyone's like, okay, now we have to go to what the Capricorn is doing. And if someone else starts another beat, Capricorn's like, oh, I'm right on top of you. Or it's like, who's really starting this thing?
Yeah.
It's a sixth house sort of like enemies is the word we would say, but it doesn't necessarily always come out like that. Capricorn is probably engaged in a positive way with its sixth house. We could almost say that the sixth is painted a positive by the ninth Lord mutual rulership.
Right. I mean, that is the ideal.
Ideally, yes, of course.
Yeah, that is the ideal. The other reason that I thought about that is because you mentioned musicians. I remember one time trying to make a CD with a couple Capricorns, and we weren't friends after that.
No kidding, eh? Dang, ain't that something?
So
music's a good way to sort of paint that picture, I think.
Well, I think it's a good idea, just based on what you're saying, that when we think about that Capricorn and the fact that Mercury is debilitating the third house, the Capricorn works well, and in this situation I was just thinking of, they work well when they guide people to some kind of understanding. But Mercury being debilitated in the third, that can show that sixth lord being not so healthy in the third, which means that when they use that Mercury, which is the manager, to manage their peers or to manage the people that they're meant to do something together synergistically with, then things tend to kind of go down the toilet. But if they're able to step back and be detached and as you mentioned, tap into their wisdom, their experience of the ninth house, and they're able to somehow guide or maybe make their individual peers or group that they're supposed to be doing stuff with, help them find the answer on their own,
yes,
that tends to work better. Otherwise, that is one of the reasons why Capricorns can have such difficulty with their siblings, with their peers, with the people they're supposed to get along with. And that's why they tend to revert to their Martian energy, which is just, you know what? I don't even care what you think. This is just what's happening. I'm going to dominate the situation.
No kidding.
You know, and it may work out well. It may work out well. Maybe you've got a brilliant Capricorn and you just need to submit to their will and their management. But most individuals, we don't live in a society where everyone's brilliant, and there's a lot of Capricorns. So thinking about how to interact and guide people, Capricorns aren't meant to manage their siblings or their peers. They are meant to interact with them and work with them. And having that sixth lord exalted in the ninth that also helps us to see that the wisdom that Capricorn brings is, again, meant to be a very practical, day-to-day, routine, down-to-earth wisdom, such that a foundation can be built and success occurs. You know, it's like the individuals who, when they are working with someone spiritually, the Capricorn individual who's doing that, and he says, look, if you want to experience higher states of consciousness, well, clean up your diet, exercise daily, go to bed and get up at the same time. That way your nervous system is as balanced and harmonized as possible, such that when you sit down to meditate, it's easier for you to have experiences of clarity. Versus the Capricorn who might say, well, we need to give you these mind-boggling, transformative experiences, and you should have them right now. So here's how we're going to force the process.
Yeah.
That is like Mercury being debilitated in the third house, where Mercury is then trying to manage something and force something, when really the beauty of Mercury being exalted in the ninth is this gentle, consistent, routine, earthly, because Capricorn's an earth sign, and Virgo, which is the ninth house, is also an earth sign. It's very stable, steady emphasis. Like, for example, maybe you've been around someone who's been in a very difficult relationship, and they have all these quirks and idiosyncrasies and psychological problems, and maybe you're fairly healthy, and you try to force that upon them. Well, you should just get over it. Just think about it this way. When really the healthy Capricorn would simply create such a safe, positive, routine environment for that person that the individual would just naturally start to feel better and naturally start to act healthier, because they're not always coming up against insecurities. They're not always coming up against, well, that's probably the best word, insecurities. So Capricorn has an interesting quality in that regard.
Yeah, it's like whoever Capricorn Ascendant works with has to deal with the Capricorn's own insecurity and lack of knowledge of whatever it is that they're dealing with.
Exactly.
I think I do a lot of work here. I live in Toronto, and I've done a lot of physical labor type work. I got Saturn and Aquarius, and I do a lot of hard work stuff that I love. I could think of the example of a Capricorn rising pouring concrete, and he's been doing it for a while, and an apprentice or just another worker who's on the same level as him is trying to pick up this concrete thing, learning how to pour the concrete without making it slap all over the place and be messy. And the Capricorn Ascendant, let's say if their Mercury is well placed in the ninth house, the adage, the work, there's a way to pour concrete. And this Capricorn Ascendant has learned how to do it. Now, if the Capricorn Ascendant has the Mercury closer to Virgo, kind of has the faith that the person can learn how to do it themselves. And the Capricorn puts a frugal emphasis on others picking up the data, on the Capricorn not doing it themselves. Now, if the Mercury is closer to Pisces, it's going to be more like, look, this is how you do it. Right? You're not gonna figure it out. Let me just look. This is how you do it. And then the Capricorn does it themselves. Does it, and it looks perfect. And they sweat and they pour all their, just like, look, it's like this. It's like this. And then the other person doesn't get to engage with the Capricorn's the whole third house thing. They don't get to engage with the pouring of the concrete because the Capricorn is trying to fasten it themselves. They're losing the bigger emphasis. They're losing the faith of the metaphysical pipeline, or the logic, the knowledge pipeline, which is the ninth house. Right.
And the point that you just brought up is that with Capricorns, while they can often revert to that more willful Martian energy, the Capricorn who has that quality of Mercury functioning well will tend to teach by example.
Yes.
They will tend not to speak at someone, or with that debilitated Mercury, they can have the potential to what they call mansplain, I guess.
Yeah. That's a good one.
It's more like, okay, hey, we're doing this. Well, look, watch what happens when I do it this way, and then the person sees, oh, wow, that actually worked pretty easily.
Right.
Versus being like, do it this way, or have you thought about doing it? Like, no, check this out. They just they approach it in a way that is, I've been doing this a long time, so let me be an example to how to do it,
Certainly, yeah. And there's just even so many different ways of like looking at that. Like we're talking about, it would be Virgo, and Virgo tends to be rather matter of fact.
Right.
If we're looking at Virgo as the ninth lord, when Capricorn is speaking matter of fact and saying only what needs to be said, not necessarily thinking about hearing the sound of their own voice. This is how it's done.
Right.
Whereas with a Capricorn with Mercury close to Pisces, I can't wait to tell you about what's going on. And it's, they get a little bit too much off on hearing the sound of their own voice because they're trying to tell the person. Now, what you do is you turn your hips at like a 44.5-degree angle and you pour the concrete this way, and they're trying to get every single little detail in there because Mercury in Pisces just loves to talk.
Right.
And it's not economical talk.
Right.
It's soulful talk, but it's not conducive to the purpose of what Mercury is trying to do, which is economize energy, economize language.
I think people miss that a lot. That's another wonderful point. In Gemini, I believe, when it comes to Jupiter, it says Jupiter, one who doesn't say much, or one who doesn't talk a lot.
Right, Pisces.
Yeah. So then you take Mercury and you stick it in Pisces, and so we often think of Mercury as being talkative, but Mercury is very precise. When Mercury is on its game, Mercury is speaking, but is not saying more than needs to be said because it recognizes, just as you mentioned, economy is very important because if it uses its words to say something economically, then that means it has energy to say something else important later.
Right, totally, which is just what Mercury loves to do.
Right. Okay, well, good. Well, do you have any other final thoughts on Mercury for a Capricorn ascendant before we wrap it up for today?
I would say that was about it. You did mention that, I guess the last thing is that when Mercury is afflicted for a Capricorn ascendant, they can be quite opinionated, atheistic, and like anti-religious. When Mercury is closer to the Pisces there, again, it misses a lot of the point of a lot of philosophy because it just wants to ring around the lip of the essential meaning of life.
Right.
Like what's the point of thinking too deeply about it all? What's the point? What's the point? Let's just like get to doing it. Is like a Capricorn with Mercury in Pisces. You're thinking about it too much, man. Look, it's just very simple. You just got to wake up in the morning and eat your cereal and go to the job that mom and dad gave you to your whatever college they prepared for you to do. Just don't think about it too much. Just do it. I think that the Capricorn with a Mercury in Virgo, again, is more discerning about philosophy. It's almost like because the mouth leaks on Pisces, the Capricorn with Mercury closer to Pisces will just talk about trivial things, will spend their mental energy on frivolous things just because they enjoy it. It's the third house and they just enjoy this kind of thing. They'll even play a lot of games and they'll talk with their brothers and their friends about a lot of things that are interesting to them in an enjoyment way. But it's not going to be as deep or philosophically to the core of life because they don't want to if it's in the third house. They want to talk about the color of your lapel. They want to talk about like your clothes. Oh, just you look so great, and they forget about what we're actually doing here. Right.
Well, that's also one fantastic point because the point of philosophy and religion isn't to keep talking about philosophy and religion.
Right. Exactly.
And I think that might be why Capricorns are often given a bad rap for saying that they are atheistic or they aren't interested in those sorts of things. When someone's got a healthy Mercury and they already know what's important. So they've already done the work to where their mind is silent. So they don't need to spend 4 hours talking about the Yoga Sutras, or they don't need to sit around and talk about all the different levels of Samkhya philosophy because they have looked at it, they have studied it, and it has led them to a place of understanding. And once they have that place of understanding, they don't feel like going back to second grade and learning how to do arithmetic again. They want to just simply exist from what they've learned. So
Definitely.
it's an interesting point that you brought up. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. I almost think of Capricorn tends to be a quiet and astute fellow, no matter where his Mercury is.
Right.
This is an interesting example of the subjective nature of one's experience, of one's emotion. Let's say we have two people sitting down and they're not saying anything, and they're both a Capricorn ascendant, and they're not speaking. The wise one is one who speaks less often, but just because they're sitting down and saying nothing doesn't mean that they're super wise.
Right.
They could be an idiot. Or just because they're sitting down and saying nothing doesn't mean that they're an idiot.
Right.
They could also be very wise.
Yeah.
For the Capricorn's case, they're usually not saying much anyway. Just take a look at that Mercury to see how much perspective is going into that silent wisdom.
Yeah, what's going on inside. It reminds me of a friend of mine who's really into Taoism. He said, Alan Watts always sort of made a joke that Lao Tzu said, he who knows doesn't speak, and he who speaks doesn't know.
Yeah.
But then Lao Tzu went on to write 70 chapters on the Tao.
I know, I love it. Alan Watts just gets me every time.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, thank you for being here again, Dustin. Again, you can check out his YouTube channel at youtube.com/howtorock-astrology.
You got it. Thanks, Ryan. It's been a huge pleasure talking with you throughout these many months of us being in these same shirts.
That's right. All right. Take care.
It's been a pleasure.